Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Lemos, and I will be hosting the rules-based calendar training for today. And I have, just by show of hands, if you can, on the little pane on the chat line, if you can just put in your hands to see if you can clearly hear me. There you go. Okay, everyone can hear. Good to know. Well, happy holidays to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know that a lot of the times these are the right times to take time off, and I can see you guys are hard at work here trying to learn new materials. Okay, with that said, I'm going to jump in right into our abacus and get started with a rules-based calendaring. Okay, so when it comes to rules-based calendaring, we have the ability in Abacus to not only just add one single event, but based on a rule, you can add more than one event at a time. So in other words, multiple events can be added in the calendar based on a rule. And what I like to describe the rule as is a series of events that are related to one another and can be placed within a timeline in order to execute um, a particular rule related with any given type of case or any given type of practice area. Okay. Some of you might have seen this option already, and what I like to do first is to go over the material, is to reiterate where you can add the rule to the calendar, and that is by simply right clicking anywhere within the calendar or the daily organizer, whether it is as an appointment that you're setting or a reminder or things to do. If you right click, you'll get multiple options. Okay, you're going to get the option of just adding a single event, and you're going to get the options of adding events from a rule, which is what ultimately we would like to use as far as when it comes to rules-based calendaring. Okay, so something else that I like to go over with regards to the rules-based calendaring is that the rules can actually also be used from the very beginning when you're using the intake form. Okay, you can attach specific rules um, that can be catered to specific practice areas. Okay, so you can ultimately have, if you have, let's say, a firm that practices multiple areas of law, let's say state planning, criminal law, immigration, personal injury, you can actually create rules that are going to be specific, right, to each one of those intake processes on those different types of practice areas. Let's say, for example, in the case of a family law, if you have what we call the family law PAL, the PAL is a practice area legal solution, and let's say it's through our intake form, okay? And you click on the family law section here, you'll notice that you have multiple intake forms. Within those intake forms, you can have specific rules that can be attached or embedded within each one of those intake forms. So the rules can be targeted or can be already pre-configured from the very beginning process of creating a case. So a lot of folks really like the concept of the rule-based calendaring, not only for purposes of that you can use it or attach it to the intake form from the very beginning, or that you can use it within the lifespan of a particular case. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that people are understood the concept of the rule. And if you don't have any intake forms that are specific to your practice areas, like such as these PALs, I also wanted to introduce it because it goes hand in hand. Being able to use specific rules that can be embedded within specific practice areas is also through the use of the intake form. And the intake form obviously is acquired through purchasing PALs, which again are practice area legal solutions. So having said all of that, it's a good way, right, of getting not only creating a case, but also using the rule that is going to be specific to a case type. So, for example, as I'm pointing out here with a family law, you can have something for adoption, something for a custody case, a divorce, domestic violence. Clearly, the sequence of action items that you have to do for each one of these different types of cases within family law is going to be obviously different from one another. So understanding that the rules can be created to, and then of course this is specific to each law firm as well, because it could be modified, a further step. is understanding that you can grasp these particular action items and you can make it your own to fit your firm's needs. So let me just tap in really quick here into one of the intake forms just so you have an idea. And I don't know if you know that this is where what I like to call where the rules reside. And this might be an overview to what you guys already know as cases, as creation of cases, right? In this example, the matter information goes at the top. The client information will go in here. You insert it in here. And then you'll see that there's opposing party and spouses and opposing counsel. The idea of the intake form is that it does everything for you and that it creates the matter, creates the names, and it creates all the links. But what else is this intake form doing? Well, the intake form is attaching the rule, okay, in this section where it says select the who codes for calendar events. Now it says calendar events, that means multiple events. And like I said before, a rule is comprised of multiple events. So in this section, you can put in, instead of imagining it says responsible attorney, imagine it says firm members. So if now I wanted to create a rule specific to my divorce case of subsequent action items that need to take place right after I fill out my intake form, this will be the ideal place for you to insert the names of the individuals that are performing specific tasks or as reminders in their own calendars. For example, I'm going to use a very general, vague example when it comes to um, the case of, let's say, just a new case, right? So after you create the intake, you fill out the intake form, you're going to want to know who is the person that's going to meet with a client for the first time within internally, right? Like within your office. So the individuals that you list here, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 4 individuals, they will all get that calendared, right, in their daily organizers as reminders. Okay. Maybe there's a person that you're going to have that's going to open up the billing account, right, in that same day. So I mentioned before that a rule is a series of events related to one another that can be spanned or expanded within a timeline. So maybe the first day when you create the intake form, you want someone to, again, meet with a client for the first time that same day. That same day, you also want them to open up a billing account. Well, maybe, I don't know, 7 days later, you want someone to write the confirmation letter. Okay. And then 14 days after that, you want someone to draft the fee contract. So you're looking at now a series of events that are going to be generated automatically after the intake form is created. And it's going to place all of these on that particular timeline, a sort of like a formula, let's say, right, within the days that you want it to be. So if you open it today and you want the days today to be the day that you meet your client for the first time, it'll show up a reminder under the individuals that you list here as far as their initials are concerned. So again, the rule-based calendaring can be used not only for the intake process procedures wise, right? The whole process is concerned, but it can also use within the lifespan. So let me show you what I mean by that. So within this concept, right, you can also note that the rules can be modified or created, right? When you go to File, Setup, and you go to Rules, that's just where they reside for the most part. I have a lot of rules because I do it, obviously, training on a lot of different practice areas, but let's just use the one example for the new case. When I come to the new case, as I use an example, I'm just going to highlight new case. And to reiterate basically the same example or similar example of what I was going over, I'm going to say new case here, and I'm going to edit. When I click on edit, this is the simplest form of a particular rule related to any general new case. So as you can see, the new case, the rule itself, has 6 different events that it will calendar if I were to use this particular rule and embed it to any one of my practice areas. Now, clearly, if you have different practice areas, you're making sure that you're going to make it, relate to each one or be specific to each one of your different ones. Because if you have a criminal case, obviously that's not going to be the same as estate planning case or a will or a trust, or obviously a divorce. So understanding that these rules can be created and then embedded specifically to each one of different types of cases so that it jumpstarts the process of your case creation. Okay. Now, again, the events, these are very simple ones. So there's meet, obviously for first meeting with a client. A day later, the interval means the day later, right? 1 day later. The day zero means that same day that you create the case will be in there. Then you have the open file. Obviously, that'll be a day later again. If you want to open up the billing account that same day. 7 days later, you're going to do a confirmation letter. And 14 days later, you're going to draft a fee contract. The individuals that you end up highlighting under that intake form is going to populate in all of their calendars as a reminder, okay, in that section over here. Because by default, it just goes straight to a reminder. Now, the actual buildup of these cases and how you can construct them can vary. All right, so you can actually like this, foundation, let's say, of this new case, but then you can modify it as well. Or I like to call it what everyone calls save as. We call it cloning. Okay, so as far as cloning these events or these rules that already exist and making it your own, it's just a matter of seeing what the intervals of days that are there is something that maybe uh, catches your eye, and then or building from there or even getting rid of some. Let's say, for example, that you do a conflict of interest check prior to any of this. There's no need for you to have a conflict of interest check. Well, you can modify that and take that away. Okay, maybe the confirmation letter needs to be 5 days out instead of 7 days out. Okay, maybe there's only one person that's always going to be opening up the billing account, and that needs to overwrite the rest of the folks that you enter in the intake form as part of the firm members that need to be notified of the reminders to show up on their schedules or their calendars after you open up a case. Okay, so these are kind of modifications that you can do. Okay, and the idea behind it all is that you can create these specific rules and then attach these rules to any given um, specific intake form. Okay, so what we normally recommend, and just so you understand as a train of thought how these rules-based calendaring work, is we don't recommend that you edit the original. So in this case, this is the original. I'm not going to edit this one per se. What I would do is I would highlight after I've taken a look at it. And by the way, another way of taking a look at it is not only you click on edit to see it, but let's say you wanted to take a look at every single one of these rules that you have that's going to show up when you open up the rules prompt. And you simply wanted, I don't know, print it out. Well, it's easy enough. You click edit first, like I just did, then click on print. And once you print, you have the option to obviously output it to the printer or output it to the screen. Let's say I want to output it to the screen, and this is basically what comes up. You can print this out, collaborate amongst your colleagues as okay, this rule looks, the only thing that we need from here, what I like is the first meeting with clients. I like the open up the billing account, the confirmation letter, and draft fee contracts. We can do without open the file and the new conflict of interest check. Okay, well now put that into practice. In other words, make sure that you execute that as a rule. Go ahead, clone the original, and edit it as such. Maybe you want 5 days out in the letter. Maybe you want it to show up only for one specific individual who handles the open billing account. Nobody else needs to see that on their calendar. Okay, so what I recommend again is understanding that these rules can be printed out, then reformatted or I should say modified, and then proceed to actually doing that. So check out of it, go back to the new case, and this time you're going to clone it. Okay, so when I'm cloning it is I'm going to go clone the rule. Please enter the new name of the rule. So instead of new case, let's just call this new NC, and we're going to call it an NC web, as in the webinar, because we're doing one here. Okay, and that will be your name of the rule. And then when I click done, then you can put say new case, and then here you can be explicit as you want, as in actually typing new case for webinars training, right? Whatever the case may be, however you want to name it, because at the end of the day, it's how you want to see the rule description showcased and how you want to name it, and obviously how you want to apply that. So let's say I hit done. That name is there. Now I can fiddle around and play with that particular rule. Okay, as I said before, maybe you don't need the conflict of interest section, so just get rid of it, delete it. Here, are you sure you want to delete this? That's fine enough. Open the file. I don't need that either. Okay, so you can delete that. I only really need event 1, 4, and 5, and 6. Does that really mean that the order should be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4? Not really. At the end of the day, What really matters is the interval and the relative column here. This is in relation to event number 5. So if this changes on a date on your calendar, Abacus knows to actually ask you, okay, whether or not you want to um, update the related event. And since this particular event is triggered by this other event, you will definitely have that um, pop-up screen say, do you want to update related events? So just like that, I just made a few edits. Besides that, what else can I do? Well, like I said, how do I just change this date of the interval of 7 days out from however it's in calendar, right? So the 0 is referring to if I book something today. Well, if you create one case, let's say today, and knows that that same day today, you're going to get calendar to meet with a client for the first time. And the billing person can be assigned to open up the billing account, right? But you want to modify the 7 days later to be 5 days later as opposed to 7, or you can just double click on it, see the interval. It's just as simple as changing that and making that 5. And just like that, you make that change from 7 days to 5 days. By the same token, let's say you needed to override who the person that's actually opening up the billing account is so that not everybody gets it, right? I can go into double click into my icon, then I can go into my event details. And in here, you can put the who code, meaning the person who handles that. And it goes, when you click on the who code, it'll take you to the list of all your timekeepers, or sorry, not your timekeepers, all your users. And then you can designate, well, when it comes to this, CP handles all, opens up all the billing accounts. There's no need for everyone else to see it. Okay, so you're overriding what you're entering within the intake form. If you list 4 names in the intake form, right, including CP, when you are overriding it here, it'll just go to CP as opposed to the rest. So all the rest of these events will go to the rest of the folks if you leave them blank, to the 4 individuals that you put in the intake form. Okay, so I could say CP, and then you can even change something that we called the reminder. So instead of showing up as a reminder, because that's what happens as a default in your calendars, you can go into the time here, and if you right click, you can change it to any specific appointment during the day, any time during the day, or you can even do a to do. Okay, there's a difference between to dos and reminders. Hopefully, some of you know that already. If you don't, simply put, reminders don't roll over to the next day. Things to do will. In other words, if I have something to handle, take care of, such as an opening a billing account, and I don't do it on that the reminder day, I won't see it the next day. But to dos actually roll over and right there, they're going to be right there in your face the next time you are on your next available calendar date. So a lot of folks like seeing that, and instead of setting reminders, they like setting up to dos. So hence the way they would change something as a reminder to a to do. So now you get the gist of it. Small changes like these go a long way when it comes to modifying and understanding the nuances on who is supposed to handle what rules, what specific events within the rule, and how these rules can then be attached to specific practice areas, and then more specifically to specific case types, right? So after you're done with all of that, all you have to do is hit done. And just like that, you just saved a new rule called NC Web. Okay, so the whole concept of creating these rules is that you can make them your own. After you make them your own, now you want to embed these particular rules to specific cases, right? Or specific, as you say, specific intake forms. In order to do that, you will go to File, Setup. You're going to go to Intake Form Manager, identify the intake form that you want to embed the specific rule that you just created to the specific type of case or the specific type of intake form, and then go from there. So let's say it was divorce, right? It's a divorce intake form that I had mentioned before. I want to make sure that I am editing that intake form, as in I want to embed the correct rule. So I just highlight it, click on edit, and it's going to come up with a web and intake form designer called records here. Okay, I can then go into my records. You can see, I don't know if you guys, any of you have dabbled in between here, but there's always going to be the names. This is really in relation to the first name section that shows up. When it does, it creates a build to link and a client. when it comes to this intake form for divorce. The section for the names will create a link for spouse. The section for the names will create for opposing counsel. What you really have to be worried about is the event section. Why? Because that's where your rules reside. Okay, so I'm going to click events, and I'm going to hit edit properties. Within my edit properties, where exactly is my rule? My rule is a what. It'll be a what code. So when I wrote NC web, that's actually the name of my rule. And that's actually going to be placed in a what code. So I need to highlight the what, and I'm going to go edit field. When I click on that, the default value that the rule is going to be is going to be the new case. I walked you through the example of the new case. So that new case is pretty much embedded with almost every single one of our cases as a sample so that you can see how the rules work. But now that you know how to develop a rule, create your own, you wouldn't put new case here as default value. What you want to call it is it'll be NC web because you know exactly the name of the rule that you created. So after you do that, it'll no longer use the new case as a rule, but rather use the one that you modified or the one that you cloned and made it your own. And then obviously it'll be specific to now to that intake form. So I hope it's clear the fact that what I'm trying to accomplish here is the rules need to be created first if you want to make sure they're paired up with the right intake form. You know now how to modify a rule. And of course, you know now how to embed it or pre-configure it with a specific intake form. So those are your steps as far as the rules are concerned for intake processes. The other concept I wanted to explain is within what the rules are, you can add a rule at any given time within the lifespan of a particular case or matter that already exists. So there's one question right now, okay, that it says, how do you put multiple people on the intake form in the responsible attorney line? Okay, excellent question. So let me just go back to that because obviously this is flowing with the questions that I'm asking with regard to the intake form. So I'll go back to my family, right, family law, and I'm going to say divorce. In this section, see how I have CPDSW, where if I click on the lookup arrow, you're going to get all of your users going to show up there. So you have up to 4 individuals that you can include so that it can be reflected on their calendar. Okay? And normally it'll be an attorney, a legal assistant maybe, or a paralegal, maybe an office administrator wants to know of every single case that's being opened, along maybe with a billing coordinator or a billing person, right? So that's why we say 4 for the most part. If you want more than 4 to be notified of any intake form that's being created, you're going to have to create a work group as a calendar item, and then of course, as a WHO code, and then all those people would always, will know that it's being designated to a work group as opposed to the individuals themselves. Okay, so that's how you would do that. You would have to just click on them, put them here, and this is what I was referring to as far as choosing more than one person in the intake form. The 4 individuals that you choose here will automatically get something under their calendar as reminders, right? Now, if you override any one individual, like in the other case for the opening of the billing account, I put CP only CP would get opening of the billing account as a reminder, right? Or in this case, it's a to-do because I moved it to to-do, right? And the rest of them won't get it. But if you leave blank in the rule, that section, then the rest of the people that you put in the intake form are the ones that are always going to receive it as reminders or as to-do as you designated, okay? At the end of the day, what's essential is you understanding the specifics of who does which action item or what event, right? And then maybe deciding not everyone needs to see that in their calendars, maybe just certain individuals, right? And that's why I went over that as an example. Now, going back to adding a rule within the lifespan of any given case, okay? So again, as I mentioned before, you have the option of going and just adding a single event or adding events from a rule. If I go to add events from a rule, I'm going to get a bunch of these rules that are already within my system. And again, any of you that have PALs, you guys already understand that some of these rules come with the PALs that you purchased. For example, estate planning is going to have several PALs that come with. Is this something as an example that you would want to use? Well, maybe you like that there's estate planning for a trust or estate planning for a will, right? A rule that's already in the system. So it's a matter of just sampling it. And what I mean by sampling is just taking a look at what we have provided. Just know that every single one of our pals, again, practice area legal solutions for the many different practice areas that we offer, okay, they're going to come with specific examples of rules. Like in case of state planning, it comes with multiple ones. In other words, it comes with, the new state planning case, the state planning trust, the state planning will, the state planning guardian, and the state planning probate. Okay, you can see that some of them are listed here already. So let's take a look at one, just so you understand, give you an example of how a, again, not again from the very beginning of the intake process, but maybe within the lifespan of the intake form, and you just simply want to add it to the calendar at any given time. If I go state planning will, and I go to edit, again, these are just the very, you know, very events of what we're using as an example with regards to what makes up a state planning will in our eyes, right? Clearly, 000, that means that the day that you choose in the calendar, that same day, you're going to have to do the fee, you get the client information and give instructions, right? If this is not too, again, not too easy for you to read, you can always print it out and have it in front of a piece of paper so you can discuss it with your colleagues. Check out other wills and the information that you have there, the court search, right? Draft the will, explaining what it is, and then one event can be triggered by the other event, like I mentioned here. That's one example of the will. If you look into the trust, let's say, for example, that's going to be a little bit more extensive of what we're providing. Again, at the end of the day, you see what you have here and you can make it your own. I mean, it can go as far out as a year later. Well, but that 1 year later is being triggered by the event number 12. Event number 12 is saying second client meeting, review and sign trust documents, finalize the funding. If you take a look at this as an example, again, by printing it, you can see that there's a sequence of what's happening with my intervals and how the relativity it is to any one of my other events. So some events are being triggered by others. Okay. You can create your own. You can follow along what this is signifying or what this is explaining as a description, and you can take from this and make your own as opposed to just using the one that we have offered you. But know that this particular, let's say, rule comes with the PAL. And again, the PALs come with not only name screens, specific matter screens, specific intake forms, specific rules, specific forms, okay, even specific reports. So to really grasp the concept of what rules can do and the rules that we have to offer for purchase and what comes with some of these intake forms is one concept. Understanding that you can build upon that foundation of these rules that are already there is another concept, right? And that's what you want. You want to personalize it, you want to customize it. You can take what we have and build upon that and make it your own. Okay, and that in a nutshell, okay, is when we're referring to rules. There's so many different kinds of rules out there, and I just want to mention if you haven't had the chance to actually take a look at the different PALs that we offer, okay, if you go within by industry here, you're going to see the different ones. There's bankruptcy, for estate planning, immigration, okay, employment law, criminal defense. Obviously, the attendance here is going to vary as far as which practice areas you have. Go into abacusnext.com, then go by industry, and then pull up your practice area. And then once you're there, like I did in this case for state planning, right? You can then see what comprises and makes that up, including the rules-based calendarings that are being offered. Okay, if you obviously are interested in something like this, there's at a cost, at a monthly cost, and I believe it's $20 if I'm not mistaken, and that can be added to the mix. Okay. Now we do offer trainings on what PALs are, as far as the very specific of the PALs that you might purchase. Go over the information that you have in place, right? We also have trainings um, on creating rules-based calendar. We can go step by step on how to actually, maybe you have a layout of of the rule that you want, but you're having trouble executing it or putting it into place. In the training, we can walk you through how to put that together. It's basically more detailed one-on-one where you can ask questions as I'm going through the training right now. You can then stop me at any given time and say, okay, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? Right now, you can't do that because it's literally, I'm just giving you obviously the concept and the overview of how it all works, but enough detail for you to say, okay, well, I can figure it out on my own, or of course, I might have to take that extra training class. So that's actually pretty much everything that I needed to say for the most part. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. So if you have any questions, please type them in. Okay, right. Well, with a scheduler service, there is um, again, this is the section where you would want to go to. The question was again, just want to make sure. The question was whether or not where you can go to schedule further classes with regards to PALs as far as the training or rules-based calendaring, where you can ask more one-on-one questions as you're building and putting together your own rules, right? So if you go to abacusnext.com, then you go all the way to the bottom, as I mentioned, schedule your service. This will come up. Then you would go into next. You were going to click on Abacus Law as a product, of course. After that, you will proceed right to the section where it says Abacus Law Training. In other words, learning general training. Learning opportunity in this career can be undertaken in any sequence. So you're going to click on this section, not the onboarding, but rather the general training area. So Abacus Law Training. Once you click on that, you're going to get a slew of specific uh, training sessions, which you can then choose from. Okay, and you can also see the agendas that are there um, to check it out, what the class is all about. Creating custom calendar rules that would be specific to similar to what we're talking about today. Okay, that's obviously with regards to rules-based calendaring. If you wanted to know about other kinds of trainings, you have all of these available. So it's just a matter of going in, understanding which training class you would like, right? And obviously going to the next option. So there's another question that came through. Can you make changes to the scheduled items in the calendar without it listing you made a change each time? Okay. Can you make changes to the scheduled items in the calendar without it listing you made changes each time? Yeah. So after you've created the main rule, you can modify after you've obviously linked it to your case, you can go into each individual case and make further edits. So if I go, I've already attached a case to a case, and then I'm going to go in and I want to, modify some of the events that are already being linked. You just go to events, you go to the specific event that you want, and you can make changes to it as in, oh, well, this one in particular shouldn't have gone to be DNCP. It should have gone to someone else. And by all means, you can change the lookup. It goes to DSW, and then it'll go and be calendar for DSW. And then if you want to add any comments, you can do that before the asterisk, right? And it'll be reflected on that individual's calendar. Of course, you got to make sure it remains linked to the case or the matter, and then that's how the type of changes that you can make. Okay, so yes, the answer is you can make it to each individual case or matter after you've already linked it or established the rule. Further edits can be done. Let's see, are there any other questions? I'll give it another couple of minutes, and if no one else can come up with a question, then we are going to call it a day. Okay, another question came up. So I'm not sure what the question is. It says is what I'm asking is in the comments. In the comments, you mean in the notes section here? It doesn't list every time you make a change. Can you make it so it doesn't list every time you make a change? By default, it's set up so that every time you make a change, it lists it, and it lists the after the asterisk, it'll list the changes that come through. But you don't have to worry about it because it doesn't reflect anywhere. If this is what you're referring to the changes that you make every single time. It'll let you know here the changes that you're making. So that only really is seen within this screen, but you don't see it in the notes section because the only thing you're going to see in the notes section is anything prior to the asterisk. No, that only shows up on the calendar, and the actual calendar shouldn't show up. If you have three asterisks right after it, I mean, right after the initial comment, this, okay, anything that's after the three asterisks shouldn't be showing up on your calendar at all. If you're having issues with that, there's a troubleshooting effort, then I suggest you call support. And I don't know if you have the support number, but I can provide that for you. And they'll be able to assist you with that. But it shouldn't be at all showing up because anything after the three asterisks doesn't show up on the calendars normally. Thank you, Janice. Do you have that phone number or do I need to provide that for you? The CSE support number. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, it looks like that will wrap things up. Again, if you guys now have a better understanding what rule-based calendaring does, again, if you want to, okay, there's another question. How do you get your window green and red? Are we referring to this section here? Well, that comes with the latest version, updated version of Abacus. It gets updated automatically. If you don't have the latest version, um, then you wouldn't have that pane like that showing up. Okay. Okay. All right. I think that will do it for now. Thank you all for attending. Happy holidays to everyone. And again, if you're interested in signing up for classes individually on one-on-one sessions after hearing this rule-based calendar training, now you know where to go as far as scheduling it online. Okay. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful holidays, and until next time.